really didn't make life easy for myself when it came to this cake. So, as I've said before, making a Disney character is never easy because everyone knows what they look like. But making a Disney character who's also a real-life human is probably one of the hardest things I could possibly ever challenge myself to do. Humans are so difficult to make, every aspect of them, but especially the face. It can look like a face, but it has to look like the person's actual face, which is so much harder. So I spent a lot of time on the head. It is made completely from cake and then covered in modeling chocolate, and then those eyeballs are made from poured sugar. But I took a lot of time in the sculpting, but I think it paid off because I do think it did resemble Bette Midler, so I think I did an okay job. The hair also took a while to try and get a bit of definition to those curls because that's her signature hairstyle, but I really enjoyed doing it. That's my favorite part of making a cake, is all the sculpting, so I was in my element. Next up, I added in some more of the smaller details like her hands and her sleeves, and then once I'd added those in, I went on to put a bit more detail into her clothing. So next thing I did was the bodice underneath her cloak, and then I added in some even more precise details like this ribbon which went down the middle. And as you can see, I've added a little bit more detail to the hands, but I'm going to add a little bit more later on. Then I had to do things like the feet, and I couldn't exactly figure out how feet went on a broomstick, so I just assumed that you would pop your toes up on it and then your dress would hang over the back. So that's what I did for those. Looks a bit weird there, but it did look pretty cool once the cake was finished. Then I went in and added loads more details like these earrings and all the creases in her clothes. Next up, it was time to paint. Now, I've said this before, I don't usually like painting cakes. I'm just not very good at it, but because this character is known for her signature blush cheeks and teeth and red pouting lips, it actually made the whole thing come together. So I was really pleased that worked, because I always get really scared about putting paint on a cake that it's just going to ruin it. But anyway, it came out pretty cool. And of course, I had to do her signature red hair to just emphasize those curls. And then I added in lots of little final details like a little bit of gloss onto the lips just to make them really pop. And I individually rolled out every single one of these eyelashes and placed them on one at a time. But I think it really did work, because this is the cake finished, and I was really pleased with this one. It was a challenge because of all the reasons that I've already said in this video, and I think trying to make it look exactly like a person, I'm never going to get it spot on, but I was really pleased with how this face and just her general hair and everything turned out, because I did think it does resemble her quite well. Here's a little 360 so you can see it from a different angle. You can see those little feet. ago, I made a Grinch cake, and it wasn't the best cake that I've ever made in my life. So last year I decided to see if I could redo it and see if I'd improved anything over the last 10 years. As you can see, I'm handling the cake a lot. Well, I don't usually do that, and I usually wear gloves. However, for this project, I was using a lot of old leftover cake that had been at the bottom of the freezer for quite some time, so it was way past its best, and it wasn't actually going to be eaten by anyone. Instead of just throwing it out, I decided to reuse it to practice my skill and have a little bit of fun. This was him covered in chocolate ganache and ready for me to add some details. So then I started using some modelling chocolate for his face, and this is where I got to before I realised that I needed to make some sugar eyes. So I use a sugar substitute called Isomalt, and it's literally just poured into these moulds, and then you pop them out and they look pretty realistic. Then I use a blowtorch to get rid of all the bubbles and cover them in an edible glaze, and they look really cool. Kind of creepy at this point, so I think I need to add a little bit more detail. Okay, that's a bit better. So then I'm just going to keep on going, and I'm going to use this little Dresden tool to add in lots of definition to the face. This is by far my favourite part, adding in all the sculpted details. But this is where it can go wrong, because if you don't get those details right, he's not going to look like the character that a lot of people know and love. So I kept going at this for a few hours until I was happy with the shape, and then I added in a little bit more detailing. Then it was time for texturizing, and this takes a long time. So I just went all over it with my Dresden tool and added lots of texture. Next up was starting to add a little bit of fondant for his belt and his shirt. And I understand not everyone likes fondant. I don't like fondant. However, it's just for decoration, so if you want to peel it off, then that's up to you. If you like it, then eat it. What do you guys think? Do you like fondant or do you not like fondant? I think it's a little bit split, but I think I know which way it's going to go. Then I added some cocoa butter colored green to paint him. People always ask, why are you painting your cakes? But I'm not actually using paint, I'm using melted cocoa butter and powder food colorings. So I mentioned that cake I made 10 years ago. Well, this is what it looked like. I mean, it was okay for my first, but it really wasn't that great. And this is the cake I made last year. I think you'll agree that there is quite a bit of improvement. Well, I hope so anyway. You can also see that his leg was bent in a pretty precarious position, and the fact that he's balancing on that, well, some magic had to be done, that's for sure. And just for scale,